Hello and welcome to the Fulcrum podcast, where we find the balance or fall of the seesaw trying. Today I have a wonderful guest for you, Jeremy Nagel. Jeremy is the founder of FocusBear, whose mission is to help neurospicy individuals cultivate peaceful, productive, and punctual lives. He's also been a friend of mine for many years, and we've had many deep conversations about productivity and making the world a better place through small actions that have a large impact. Jeremy, welcome to the Fulcrum podcast.
Great to be here, Joey.
Great to have you, my friend. So I thought a good place to jump off would be talking about your very tight habit game. You have like a next level habit game compared to most people that I know. I'd love to know what got you interested in habits. Is it a discipline that you've had from a young age? And if not, what's been the turning point for you?
Well, it's probably worth giving some context that I'm autistic and therefore have a very high regard for routines in general, that it does make me feel safe. So I think for some people, it might be something that they have to force themselves into, whereas for me, it's more something that I feel bad unless I have a set of routines. And that's one part of it, but I guess that doesn't necessarily always mean that the routines are going to be positive things, that it's quite common to have a set of comfortable activities which actually don't lead me towards my goals. Like in the past, I had habits that didn't really serve me, things around comfort eating, for example, that later turned into an eating disorder. And they were serving a purpose, which was to deal with the emotions, but they were not serving the purpose of me being physically or mentally healthy. And part of my journey in developing different habits is really recognizing what type of behaviors are going to lead to longer term happiness, health, and contentment, realizing that some of the more recommended ones, like exercise and meditation and talking to people, are ones that I want to fit into my life. The other influence that I'd mention too is a book by Atul Gawande called The Checklist Manifesto, where he talks about how airline pilots and surgeons really benefit from having a checklist. And although they're incredibly smart people and you'd think that they just know how to fly a plane or remove an appendix, they actually screw things up quite often in terms of leaving scalpels inside human bodies or forgetting to put the landing gear down. And by having a checklist, it almost guarantees that they're going to do it the right way. And I was very influenced by that book in thinking about how can I apply that to my work in reducing the number of bugs that I create as a software developer, and how can I apply it to my life as well, in reducing the unforced errors that come from just forgetting to take my keys with me or other things like that. And it can really be turned into a set of habits.
I like that term, unforced errors. I think that's the very reason the checklist is in there, right? Like I think you'd probably say leaving a scalpel inside a patient would be definitely not a forced error. No one's forcing you to do that, right? So I'm a big fan of the checklist as well, and the idea of getting stuff out of your head and putting them on a piece of paper. Now, I'm also guilty, I guess, of possibly sticking a bit too closely to that piece of paper. So like once I got my checklist down, here's the recipe that I follow. And I guess I'd love to know, like, how do you get around that idea of getting tunnel vision around maybe your checklist, maybe treating it, once you got the checklist down, treating it as gospel? Do you have like set times when you revise the checklist?
Yeah, I think that's where routine or habits can be a straitjacket, that if there's a situation where legitimately I don't have time to do all of my habits, it's not great if that in itself makes me feel anxious. Because the purpose of the habits is not so I can tick things off, it's so that I can experience a change of state and feel calmer and more productive. And I do find it hard, but I guess one thing that's helpful is the idea of a minimum viable routine. That for me, for example, on days where I know that things are going to be a bit erratic or that it's just super packed, then rather than only not being happy unless I've done half an hour of meditation, I'm okay if I do 10 minutes. And then the goal is to have most days not be like that, that be an exception rather than the rule, but be okay that if something unexpected comes up, or if I've just triple booked myself in the morning and I have zero time to do all the things unless I wake up at 4:30 a.m., then it's okay. I can give myself permission to do a smaller set. But I think earlier on you mentioned something about small changes, and I think that's key too, that it's about keeping the momentum up, that it's all right for me to not do half an hour of meditation, but it's not great if I do 0 minutes. There's a power to even doing 1 minute of meditation, or going for a walk around the block rather than going for a 1 hour run. There's still some value in keeping the momentum up.
As you were saying that, I was thinking like minimal viable routine sounds a lot like James Clear's principle of reduce the scope and stick to the schedule. I'm not sure. Have you heard of that principle?
Probably.
Yeah. So
I've read his book. Can't remember.
Yeah. Unlike me, who doesn't read books, I just read summaries on the internet, like a hack. But I remember one of the interesting things was I live by myself, and so I have probably a greater control over my environment than people that live with that cohabitate. And I found like when I was staying over at a partner's place, and they might not be into meditation or yoga or journaling, maybe none of the above. It can be difficult to like go, hey, do you mind if I just take like half an hour out of our date night to do my wind down routine? And I found myself abandoning it. But then I was like, hey, hang on a second. Maybe instead of doing my full yoga routine, what if I just do like one fold over? And like instead of doing my entire journaling session, what if I just write a 1-sentence story of the day? And instead of meditating for 10 minutes, what if I just took one mindful breath before I went to bed? And I think, like you said, like that was just like a great way to keep the momentum up.
Yeah. And even more powerful if the other person supports your goals and will do the habits with you.
Well, I think that's one of the wonderful things of like reducing the scope and sticking to the schedule, because instead of completely skipping the routine and then it's like out of sight, out of mind, they see me doing these little things and they're like going, oh, what's that about? Oh, and it's just like, well, Joey is like so dedicated to this stuff that he's willing to do just these like not huge things, but they're just like little things to keep things going. Maybe I'll take to it. And that's actually what happened in this particular case. And so it is kind of a wonderful way to, I'm not sure if lead by example is a too strong a term for it, but it's just a good way to model things that are important to you, I guess.
Yeah, and I find sometimes with my wife that we'll do things slightly differently together. There's some yoga videos that I don't really like on my own, but I'm happy to do it with her. That we'll follow along and do an evening wind down yoga together.
Nice. Yeah,
that can actually make it better.
Yes, yeah, and I think that goes to the idea of having that social pressure might be too strong a word, but just like I think we're social animals and we're not really meant to do too many things solitary, at least for a long period of time. And I think bringing your wife into it to not necessarily even explicitly as like a habit buddy, but maybe she's interested in it as well. And like when there's that mutual interest, you can have that mutual momentum. And I think it's I think you see it with gym buddies as well. Like in any moment there might be one buddy that doesn't really feel like going, but like it's probably less likely that both buddies don't feel like going. And so the momentum keeps up. So that's I think that's a great way of doing it. Have you so when you're talking about having these routines and habits to help you feel safe and comfortable, have they always involved other people, or has is it have you gradually brought other people into your habit process over time?
Yeah, probably more of the latter, of bringing people in later on, because I have tended to be quite a solitary animal.
Mm.
And sometimes that's good. That I do think that for me, I benefit from some time alone.
Yeah.
Being around people all day can be draining, or at least the wrong type of people. But there are some activities which are way better with other people. Like to your point about gym buddies, I work out harder with my personal trainer, and I do a harder running workout when I do it with the athletics club.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
power to that.
Yeah, definitely. I think even for those of us that might not describe ourselves as competitive people, just having people around can, for better or worse, right? For better or worse, can alter our performance. If you're in a group that is potentially running slowly, you might not be willing to push yourself as much. I don't know, Jeremy, has that been? Have you ever been in a case where like you might be in a running group where like you feel like you're being dragged? You don't have to name names, but you, that you feel like you're being dragged back, and like you maybe don't feel like pushing so much.
It probably depends on the type of workout.
Yeah.
There have definitely been times where I've run with people who are much slower than me, and I don't mind, because the purpose of that workout is not really for it to be a workout. It's more just it's a way to have a conversation, and I really like being able to do there's level 2 cardio, zone 2 cardio with someone else and having a chat along the way. But then afterwards, I might, if I did want to do a heel rep workout that day, I might, after I say goodbye to them, go and do a little bit more on my own.
Yes, yeah, the good old zone 2 cardio, right? And that's almost like having the conversation is almost the test of the zone 2 cardio, right? To make sure that you're actually doing zone 2 and not zone 1 or zone 3.
Yeah, it can be harder if the other person is more or less fit than you.
That's it. Yeah, it's all relative, isn't it? What zone 2 is. I'd love to wind back a little bit to when you're talking about the routines being comfortable. We touched on that a little bit before, but I'd like to actually understand when I'm in a bubble of comfort, I actually find it really difficult to change tactics. And so how did you actually, I guess, pry yourself away from that like routine stack that you'd built around yourself to keep yourself safe? How did you realize that, oh, actually, this isn't keeping me safe? Well, sorry, it is keeping me safe, but it is actually keeping me from perhaps growing or reaching my goals.
Are you talking about what I was referencing before in terms of, say, comfort eating being one set of habits?
That's right, yeah.
With that situation, I think it was quite evident to me that it was both giving me comfort but also extraordinary pain, because I was becoming an exercise bulimic and getting to the point where I would start eating and it would feel good initially, and the sensation was really calming and soothing, but then I would eat so much that my stomach would be distended and it was painful to move, and then there were times where I was then making myself vomit at the end. So it was very clear that it was not good for me.
Yeah.
I would identify it as a form of addiction, and that's where it can be harder to break. That there's many forms of numbing that people might turn to that might not be food for you, but might be alcohol or substance abuse,
video games.
Yep. Behavioral addictions.
Yep. I think for me, I tend to go in extremes a little bit. And so I know if I've, in various times of my life, I've felt like my video game compulsions have gotten a little bit out of control. And I'd often swing to a different direction, just basically go, okay, cold turkey, not gonna have it anymore. And there are certain things that are enriching about playing video games for me, and I can play video games, like I can have all the goodness of it without the necessary compulsion. I'm curious about how you with something like perhaps like overeating or comfort eating, how do you, I guess, stop yourself from swinging in the other direction and just basically saying, okay, like clearly, like I've got a problem with food. I got to cut that out, and I guess having a very strict relationship with food, perhaps one that is maladaptive in its strictness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, hear what you're saying, because you do still have to eat. And
yes.
there's another form of disordered eating, which is orthorexia, which is excessively strict eating. And that's really a balance that I've had to find. And my current way of eating probably looks excessively strict to people, where I weigh most of my meals when I'm at home. And to some people that would seem extreme, and they would say true recovery around binge eating and bulimia is more around the intuitive eating style, where you should just be able to listen to your body and figure out how much you need to eat or what types of food you need to eat.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have a great deal of interoception, so I'm quite happy to follow this approach of weighing my food and having certain amounts that I've had specified by a nutritionist, that I eat this much vegetables and this much carbohydrates and this much protein in every meal. And for me, that's fine. I think everyone has to find their own way. And this approach is probably not desirable for most people. It's also potentially a broader question in terms of addiction recovery around abstinence-based recovery, which is where, with the video game example, you just wouldn't play video games anymore. Yes. Or the harm reduction approach, where it's like, well, it's all right if I played a little bit. It's more that I'll try and make sure that I don't play more than 6 hours per day. And
6 hours would be great.
Or half an hour, or whatever amount that you specify, and not trying to not beat yourself up if you do use a lot one day, that the next day use a bit less. And I think there's research around the harm reduction approach generally being more successful for most people, because the adherence to abstinence-based approaches is not that great. But for me, it tends to work. I think the way that it has worked for me is just actually having a different approach to follow. Because say with the eating in the past, I would do my vision boards each year. And in 2011, which is the year I found recovery around food, one of my New Year's resolutions was to eat mindfully. But it was such a vague concept that I didn't know how to implement it. I couldn't tell if I was eating mindfully or not. And just the idea of I'm eating mindfully if I weigh my food and if I don't use my computer while I'm eating, that was clear enough that I could follow it. I had more precise guidelines.
Yeah. I think having that precision is good for like setting yourself up for success. And just to go back to the term that you use, interoception, my understanding of that is like your awareness of your internal body environment. So as you apply that to food, I guess you're talking about some people have a very keen sense of like when they're full or when they've had enough to eat, whereas you'd probably less sensitive to that. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm amazed that, say, my wife will eat 2/3 of her meal and then stop and say she's full. I never really had that sensation. And I think it was potentially accentuated by the amount of exercise that I was doing, because I was working out probably 30 hours per week at that point in my life. And I genuinely did need to eat quite a lot in order to fuel my body. So I would feel hungry, but then that messes things up. I think that's part of the challenge of exercise bulimia, that when you get into that threshold of you're used to exercising a lot and needing to eat a lot, then there were times where I got injured. And potentially because of what you were saying earlier about the challenges of working out with other people, that I was pushing myself, training with people who were fitter than me, and got injured as a result. And then it's very hard to stop the eating when you've been used to it at a certain level. The exercise stops, but yeah, stopping the eating can be hard.
I think that happens even with people that, well, I'm not sure what a normal exercise routine looks like, but like the real like gym junkies that go out there and they try to get really fit, and then they have an injury, or they just they just lose interest in it, but the what do you call it, the calorie intake doesn't catch up as quickly, if at all, and they end up gaining like a lot of weight. And yeah, so where's I going with that? Oh yeah, like just that it's potentially something that happens in even like probably even outside exercise. Sorry, is it exercise bulimia? Exercise bulimia.
Yeah, but it's also a very underdiagnosed mental illness, particularly
Right.
men. I think the bigorexia, the illness around wanting to become massive in order to impress people and have huge biceps and pecs, that in itself may actually be a mental illness in some people. And there's not a lot of discussion about that, but it can be quite problematic, especially when people are abusing anabolic steroids and substances like that in order to reach their goals.
Yeah. I think I can definitely relate. I've pretty much been underweight my entire life, and I've always been trying to gain weight. And so, I think the idea of like always trying to gain more mass, and who's to say if I'd have a complex around it or not? I haven't really dug into it that much because I never really thought it was a problem. But yeah.
Well, there's a huge societal narrative around it. For women, it's about getting thinner, and for men, it's around being buff.
Yeah.
Hard to avoid internalizing that.
I wonder if this is going to take us down a rabbit hole. But like, I guess like I'm wondering like where do you find the balance then? I guess because I guess a healthy state of relating to your body is that you are good the way you are, and you can also change your body if you want to. But I guess that if you want to part is the critical part. Like it's making sure that you're changing for the right reasons, not because it's what some ad told you. It's because it's something that you deeply want. Is that the idea?
Yeah, and it's probably about the motivations as well. That the motivation is about, I want to be massive so I can get all the girls and impress the other dudes at the gym. Maybe that's not the healthiest motivation, but if it's more like, I want to get stronger. For me, the reason I lift weights is because I really like cross-country skiing, and I want some more power to get up the hills. And for me, mostly seems like a positive motivation. I think there are still subconscious motivations that I'm not always fully aware of, that I do still want to impress people at the beach, things like that, even though if I look at that motivation, it doesn't really make sense. And it's probably also about the intensity around how it's followed, that going back to talking about how if routines are disrupted, it can cause anxiety. In the past, I felt very anxious if I couldn't work out. Like if it was raining and I couldn't go for a run, then I'd be very stressed and thinking, how am I going to regulate my emotions, and how am I going to burn off the calories that I ate last night? Whereas now I do exercise because I enjoy it. I like going for a run, and I mostly enjoy doing resistance training.
I think finding the intrinsic enjoyment as well, like in these activities, is important for keeping it going. Sometimes I wonder whether I rationalize like the intrinsic motivation with like extrinsic stuff. So like, for example, maybe I'm telling myself I like the burning sensation in my back and my arms, because I don't want to admit to myself that I'm really propelled by society. Like, what was it? Bigorexia, was it? Yeah. Maybe I've internalized like a whole bunch of narratives around needing to be big, and I'm just like I'm just like rationalizing this as like, yes, you want this joy, you want this pain.
Yeah, well, it's always a mixture of intrinsic and extrinsic. I guess
Yeah.
the test would probably be, are you doing things that are going to sabotage other parts of your life? That if you're just going and doing some pull-ups and it's not getting in the way of anything else, then what's the harm in it? But if you're shooting up steroids and if you, I don't know, are spending 5 hours in the gym and unable to work as a result, then maybe that's a problem.
I think I did this exercise in my mid-20s where like I was part of this group that were basically saying like you should like pretty much everything you do should be like intrinsically motivated. Like you shouldn't be extrinsically motivated by anything. And it was a pretty extreme stance on things. And so I started looking through like all the motivations I had, and I was like, do I really like want money because like do I really want it for myself, or like is it just because society tells me to, and all this stuff? And I was like thinking to myself, okay, well, if I was going to be completely intrinsically motivated, mind you, this is in my mid-20s, so I was just like, well, maybe I'll just like not work and just play video games all day in my parents' spare room. And actually I didn't need a spare room because I was living at my parents', so I could just in my bedroom and just mooch off my parents for the rest of my life. And so I was thinking maybe that's what I intrinsically want. And I think what you're saying about needing a balance between intrinsic and extrinsic is useful, because I think, I don't know if maybe I didn't go deep enough, or maybe I went too deep. I don't know, but it just seemed like if I was just based off like purely my own desires, then I'd be a pretty like narcissistic individual. Whereas because we live in a society as well, and if we want to get on well with other people, there needs to be like a balance with like extrinsic values and like extrinsic goals, like the goals of society and stuff like that. I don't know if we're going too deep into like the collective goods and stuff like that, but do you have anything? Do you have any comments on that?
It's making me think about Ready Player One and maybe Wall-E worlds where in a post-scarcity economy, there's no need to work, and there's various predictions about what people would do in that situation. Would we all create art all day, or would we become the Wall-E blobs and just be consumers of playing games and just satisfying our whims?
Yeah.
But I'd hope that there'd be a combination of the two. I've had times where, I guess in my teens, I spent a lot of time playing video games.
Yep.
And I think there was a point where I got bored of that, and I wanted to create, and the creation was still related to video games, but there was an outlet there that seemed to be, I guess, linked potentially to extrinsic motivation in terms of wanting to be part of a community, but also intrinsic motivation of just really enjoying making something new.
Yeah. And I've actually read Ready Player One twice, but I'm just trying to think about like what you're alluding to is like, I think the main player in the game, in the book, he lives in a like, I think he lives below the poverty line, I think it's fair to say, and he spends all of his time in this virtual world, and it's like it is like one of the themes of the book, I think, is probably about escapism, right? And what is the reality that matters? This reality where you can be this superhero with like very little emotional or like financial investment. You can like be this superhero and like essentially live your best life through the superhero, or like being this meat machine type thing and toil and is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, and also at the end, I haven't read the book, I've just watched the movie, but at the end, there's a reference to making the metaverse turn off on Wednesdays because he wanted to hang out with his girlfriend.
Right. Yeah, I've only listened to the book. I listened to the book twice on Audible. I've never seen the movie. Was it good?
I liked it.
Okay, maybe I'll see the movie as well. Oh,
I did find it a bit scary just from the idea. There's also the dystopian evil corporation that wants to lock everyone into looking at the VR headset all day so
yes.
they can show as many ads as possible, just sub hallucination level. And I feel like there's certainly some powers that are heading us in that direction.
Yeah, I wonder what you could mean, Jez. Matter. um, Possibly YouTube as well. That you're probably watching this on.
Yeah, find the right type of screen time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Like I guess speaking of the community aspect of things, I'd like to also talk a little bit about the work you do with FocusBear as well, and like your journey from, I guess, being a trying to master the art of like habit building for yourself, and then thinking, oh, maybe I can do this for other people, and then I guess the work that went on to FocusBear. Could you tell us a bit more about that turning point in your life?
Hmm. I mean, the inspiration for FocusBear originally was that I had a to-do list, which had all these activities that I wanted to do in my morning routine. I wanted to meditate. I wanted to go for a run. I wanted to do some journaling, another 15 things. And I was part of an accountability group with Joey and a few other friends. And I think there was one day that I succeeded in ticking off all the items in my to-do list. And I sent a screenshot to the group, and I realized that was actually an awesome day. How can I do that every day? And I realized what was getting in the way of me doing it was tech, that I'd be on my computer too late at night working, and I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go straight to my computer and check my emails, and it would derail my morning routine. So that was the inspiration for building FocusBear originally for myself, to solve that problem of getting distracted from what actually would have helped me. And then the community side of it was partly just talking to people that I already knew, but also seeing on Reddit a lot of discussions in the No Surf subreddit and the ADHD subreddits about people having similar problems, and realizing that I wasn't alone in having trouble with the way that attention gets pulled. And I sort of gave a rant before about evil corporations, but it's also internalized that it was me searching for escape, searching for a quick dopamine fix, and I wanted a way to change that. And the community was originally hanging out on Reddit, but that actually doesn't feel like the right place for me. I haven't, even though I chatted to a few people on Reddit, it's not the way that I want to engage with people. It is a way that a lot of people, I guess, find companionship and find camaraderie. I just find it overwhelming. So the way that I've built community since then is I actually made a post on the ADHD programmers subreddit asking, hey, does anyone want to do a peer support group where we'd catch up and do a Zoom call, or it turned into a Discord/Google Meet call. And that's been really positive, forming a few little groups like that, where I've got one on Thursday mornings at 6 a.m. where myself and a few other ADHD programmers catch up and talk about challenges that we're going through and support ourselves through that. And they give me a lot of ideas about FocusBear. And then also on Sunday mornings, I was doing a group with some people who are aligned with effective altruism, which is a community that Joy and I are both in, and also the neurodivergent community. There was some crossover there, and having a similar kind of small group community like that, I find that works better for me than massive communities, even though there's a higher probability that I'm going to get a quality answer from a large Stack Overflow or Reddit style group, because there's potentially hundreds of thousands of respondents there. but I'm not necessarily looking for the correct answer. I'm more looking for people who are going to go on the journey with me and who are going to share their own vulnerability and share their own experience going through it, and do it not via a written form, but via a conversation.
What I'm getting is Reddit. With Reddit, you could get probably the answers that you wanted because you're crowdsourcing quite a large community. However, it seems like the sense of connection wasn't necessarily there.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of hostility on Reddit as well.
Yes.
If you get in the wrong way, then you get flamed.
Yes. Yes. So much. Yeah. So you mentioned quite a few accountability groups. Are you part of all of them at the moment?
Yeah, they're not necessarily accountability groups.
Got it.
I've got an accountability coach as well through the Goals One app.
Yep.
I'm not helpful, but these groups are more like problem solving. And Joey and I have participated in groups as well with some friends who are in the EA community. And I just really like that model of a couple of people getting together and no one is the guru or the boss without problems. Everyone shares their own situation that they're going through and encourages the other people. And the idea is that when we do the calls, it's normally about 45 minutes, and the structure will be something like begin with 5 minutes where we each share a few wins, and then each person gets around about 10 minutes to talk about a challenge or a question that they're encountering right now. And the other people ask questions or offer experience to help the person in the hot seat to come up with some kind of resolution.
I have been playing around with the idea of like everyone is equal in the group, but there's one person that's facilitator. So they make sure that the meeting kind of runs to schedule. So like sometimes you can have one person that dominates the conversation. Like they might treat it like an unstructured therapy session when really you're just there to talk about what you did last week and what you're going to do next week. So yeah, in all of your groups, so it sounds like it's all fairly like flat. There's no one that has that role. Is that right?
Yeah, we established the ground rules up front, and then it's pretty clear how it will work. I'm in another one as well, a mastermind group, which is similar idea for entrepreneurs sharing ideas, and haven't really had an issue. There are some weeks where often like maybe I don't really have anything to discuss that week, and someone else has a burning issue, and I'm quite happy for them to get more of the limelight that week because it comes around the next time.
Yeah, that's true as well. Sometimes it pays to not be too tightly structured around the agenda, because like you said, I guess it all comes out in this over the course of a year's worth of meetings, perhaps.
Yeah, but in the beginning, I think it helps to have a structure and stick to it. And then once you know each other better, the structure can relax a little bit if it needs to.
Yeah. And what's I guess, I know you're saying not all of them were accountability, but I guess in all of these groups, the success of it depends on people showing up regularly. So when you say like everyone gets to know each other and stuff, is it the case that you have like a certain start point, like a cohort type thing? So like this cohort's going to run for like about 3 months, 6 months, or is it like an indefinite type structure?
The ones that I've been in have been indefinite.
Yeah.
Been in the mastermind group. We started working together in 2020, and we're still meeting weekly. And there are weeks where maybe only 2 out of 3 show up. Yeah. And that's okay. We just do a shorter session. And there's another one, the EA one has recently, I think, dissolved. One of the people in particular was feeling like they weren't getting value out of it, and they've opted out. And I'm fine with that as well.
Yeah.
That there may be some value in having a predefined expiration date, and then it's opt in. Do we want to continue? Yeah,
I'm currently running a cohort with it's people from a bunch of different walks of life, but I guess what the common thread is we're trying to start smallish businesses or run smallish businesses. And so I generally say like we'll give it a go for 3 months, and that 3-month period allows me to just like take a step back and ask that person, how's these 3 months been going for you? Are you getting what you like out of it? So, and it doesn't necessarily mean like after 3 months you're out. It's just like after 3 months, let's just talk about how's it going for you? I think that can help as well.
And I'm sure throughout the 3 months, there'd be discussion about what's working, what's not working as well.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Oh, Jeremy, this has been a fantastic conversation. Where can people learn more about you and your work?
On LinkedIn, if you search for Jeremy Nagel, founder of FocusBear, or go to focusbear.io.
Wonderful. We'll have all that in the show notes. Jeremy, do you have any final words or asks for our audience?
I think the overall tagline of the show is really apt when we're talking about this topic around routines, not making them so restrictive that they end up being a straitjacket and a cause of anxiety, but also not being so lax that there's no structure at all. Finding the middle way, as Wood has said, is the best way forward.
Wonderful. And we'll wrap the show with that.